This St. Patty's Day episode of TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Patio Prado, sire of 3-year-old colt Cherry Wine, a leading contender in Saturday's Rebel Stakes.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have to talk about the Rebel here in a little bit. That, of course, is a prep for the Arkansas Derby. There's some really good horses pointed for that. But before we do, let's recap last weekend's races, and let's talk about the Tampa Bay Derby first. You know, we always talk about that racetrack as a little quirky. You know, you never really know what you're going to get. Watching that race and kind of, you know, seeing those two horses come down the stretch, you weren't really sure how fast they were going. But I'll tell you, man, Destin really looks like he's maturing into a nice horse.
Man, has he ever. I mean, here's a horse that, I mean, we're pretty close to connections with this horse. I mean, in many regards. I mean, I remember this colt when he was purchased by Twin Creeks as a yearling at Keeneland. TaylorMade sold him, and we had heard that, you know, Creative Cause was a brand name at the time. We had heard that this was his better little brother. I mean, Destin was always better physically all along the way. Twin Creeks purchased him for $400,000. You know, he looked like he had some star quality to him. Then you go to his 2-year-old year last year, and you can see, you know, based on what he's turned into and what he's bred for, he's bred to be a classic kind of horse. He wasn't bred to be necessarily a precocious, quick type 2-year-old. So they weren't, you know, maybe as high on his precocity early on, but he did break his maiden first time out. And you really wondered, you know, how good of a 3-year-old would he turn out to be? And I think they always had high hopes for him.
Sure.
But we saw in the LeCompte, he was very green in that race, John. And so you just didn't know if he was really Derby material yet. Because, I mean, it all has to come together in a short span of time for you to be able to collect the points, obviously, to be ready for early May to be a Derby candidate. Well, he goes to Tampa. We see him break through in the Sam Davis against what I think was a pretty weak group. And then he really validates it this time with another huge step forward in the Tampa Bay Derby, to where I love where he tracked with Javier. I mean, here's a horse that, again, I thought at one time was going to be just a grind away closing type, but he was tracking in a good stalking position here. When a horse is on his game like that and able to put the rider into that type of position, finish off of it, you have to be impressed with the maturation of this colt in his last 3 races, particularly his last 2. And you see him here. I mean, they're 7 lengths clear of the group. I think it's a really good race, John. Outworks a legit horse, a horse that he ran down here. Outwork got a contested lead in his first time around 2 turns. They set a track record, Street Sense's track record.
Wow.
Okay, get 100 buyer. You don't see triple-digit buyers that often at Tampa Bay Downs with these early 3-year-olds. Just go back and look. I think Verrazano may have done it. We know how good he was. But not a lot of horses run that triple-digit buyer. So track record, fast race, love the way Destin did it, love the improvement he showed. And what's interesting about Destin is, John, that was a mile and a 16th. I think there's more improvement in the tank. I think a mile and an eighth is his game, and probably 10 furlongs hits him right between the eyes. So Destin has to vault up for anybody looking at the Derby list right now in terms of a major player.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at the TCI top 10 and let's see how well he did to jump onto this list. You know, typically your TCI top 10, you know, once you set it, they kind of, you know, the horses kind of creak into the top 10.
Blew up this week.
You know, this week top 10 is completely different, but to watch Destin go from not being on the list to number 4, I mean, that speaks volumes to what you think of the colt.
Well, you see, Zulu was at number 3. He's out now. He hasn't worked since the Fountain of Youth, John. Makes you wonder what's going on there. And quite honestly, it's what we talked about. You know, there's some talent in here, but there's a lot of parity too. I mean, and we talked about how the Tampa Bay Derby and San Felipe was going to be, you know, maybe 5 contenders in each of those that I thought had a chance to win. And certainly the favorites, Brody's Cause and More Spirit, neither one of them got the job done. So it just kind of shows you where we're at with this 3-year-old picture. So when I see a Derby profile and an improving colt this time of year like Destin, I have to move him in the top 5. Zulu moves out for me. More Spirit, I do like the way he ran. It didn't surprise me. He wasn't able to get the job done, but that last burst he showed, the final 16th, again, shows me that he's going to be better too, going a mile and an eighth, a mile and a quarter. He's really kind of developing right now as well. So I'm going to move him up a spot. Destin comes in, and Nyquist is a champion. Classic distances, I will continue to question that, but again, as others fail,
right,
he just keeps being undefeated. I have to put him in the top 5 now and respect that. Zulu is out of the top 5.
All right, well, let's look now then and talk about the San Felipe, the race that More Spirit ran in. Like you said, he came running late, but the horse that beat him, you weren't surprised. You thought going into the show, into that race, last week's show, you felt like that the horse had a big shot. You felt like he could get loose on the lead. Looks like that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it was kind of separation Saturday, that race. I mean, with so many horses that you felt were in the hunt in both races. I mean, look, we saw Economic Model run last. He ran awful. Probably didn't handle the Tampa surface, and who knows, maybe he's not a two-turn colt. We saw some horse in the San Felipe do the same thing, and the Calbred, Smoky Image. And where was he? He was way back. I think now you have to say, okay, well, Smoky's Image, he's not California Chrome, he's not ready for the big stage, but a horse that we saw break through was Dancing Candy, John. And I will say this, they broke, nobody wanted the lead. I'm not saying this colt has to have the lead, but he's had good trips his last 2 starts. He broke better this time, found himself on the lead, but he had his ears up down the backstretch. And I know the fractions are fast, 22, and 4, 46 flat, but I'm telling you, on that track the way it is right now, and just watching these horses and the way they're ridden and how comfortable he was on a lone lead, that was not very hard for him, a good horse. He got a good trip. He got the best trip, in my opinion, to be able to be on a speed-type track like that, uncontested, and he was able to spurt away from them there. You got to like how More Spirit gallops out here, Exaggerator. He was ready to fall apart at the end, and that's why, again, when you start looking at my TCI top 10, Exaggerator is a colt that, for me now, even though he ran third, and some people will say, well, he made a big middle move in there. That's true. I wonder if he's a classic colt. He falls off the top 10 for me. Brody's Cause. I'll give him, I'm okay with him running a clunker at Tampa Bay. But now he's really got to gear it up and get points in his next start, maybe in the Bluegrass, John. So he falls to 10 for me. Obviously, Exaggerator's off. Dancing Candy, again, that race set up for him. I'm going to put him in the 8th spot. He may be better than that. He got 100 buyer as well, too, which is respectable. But, again, I want to see him overcome some adversity. He'll have to do that in the Santa Anita Derby. And Shagoff's another horse that drops for me. Again, as these horses emerge, I can't continue to give Shagoff the benefit of the doubt when he's running slow and other horses are emerging. My man Sam, I'm going to give him a big bump with Motom. Again, love their potential as closers, late developing horses.
All right, well, let's move now then and talk about the Rebel. Oaklawn has been a track that's really gained, a lot of traction as far as a legitimate Derby prep. And now you start seeing some good horses coming in for the Rebel, including a horse you liked last week you thought was going to run in the San Felipe, and that's Cupid. Scratches out of there or doesn't enter in there, and now we're going to see him here in the Rebel. Tell me, what do you think of his chances?
Well, anytime a track produces success like that, Smarty Jones, the Fleet Alex, Bodemeister, and Curlin, and last year American Pharaoh, you're going to see a lot of people taking that route and that path. And when you start bumping the purses like Charles Sella has, $900,000. This isn't even a final prep, John. This is 2 out.
Right.
$900,000 they're giving away here, and then obviously $1 million in the Arkansas Derby. Yeah, it's going to draw a lot of attention. You have a full field of 14 in here, John. And I think what's interesting about this group is we saw how much pace last time out showed up in the Southwest Stakes. I think there's a lot of speed and a full group in here as well. But all of the best closers, in my view, drew the far outside. Whitmore, Cherry Wine, Sudden Breaking News. 12-hole, 13-hole, 14-hole with a fairly short run to the first turn. What kind of trips are they going to get, and how will it compromise them? Whitmore is a colt that I think, had excuses last time out. He's a horse that I'm interested to see run back here, and he also has a pedigree to improve as the distances get further. But a colt I really have my eye on, really it's 2, is Cupid for Bob Baffert. We picked him last week. Bob took the conservative route. We talked about the fact that he may scratch and send one to Oaklawn to run for the money. Horse had a good work, and I think Bob likes his chances in here. I'm interested to see how Cupid runs as he really steps up from the maiden ranks to face a full field in here. He's going to take dirt. He's going to have to ship. It's a tough task for Cupid. I want to see if he can be on the fast track like Bodemeister. Break your maiden late, jump right into Greatest Stakes Company, and prove that you're legitimately going to come around by early May, be a top Derby contender. So Cupid, big test for him. And Siding Spring, I think if you're looking for a long shot here, if the pace were to maybe not be as ambitious, he had blinkers off the shelf, he was fresh last time, he emptied out late, but he's a long shot colt that I think's interesting in here with sort of a stalking type trip. But look, this race is wide open too, John. we didn't even talk about a Grade 1 winner, Rallis, for Doug O'Neill coming back in here. This is a very good contentious, wide open group. You don't see any of these horses in the TCI top 10, but certainly there's some horses in here that have the talent to break through and make that top 10.
All right, well, thank you, Joel. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll see if any of the horses in the Rebel can do enough to get into the TCI top 10.